Titans. We are here with quarterback coach at Gadsden City High School, Ahmad DeRamus. Most of y'all don't know Ahmad played football here at Gadsden City under Coach Matt Scott, and he went on to go play football at Tuskegee. Tell us about yourself as far as from the beginning when you were little growing up. Just tell us about yourself.
I always been a student, like a student of the game. So like when I talk to my parents early on, because I'm one of those people that like to ask, like why was I acting like this or whatever. And when I ask them early on, what was some signs early that I was interested in football, and from like according to both of them, really my daddy. I was about 2-3 years old, just sitting in front of the TV watching Michael Vick. So that's kind of how I got started. And I remember specifically, I had to be first grade. I started playing quarterback, and that was the only thing that I really ever wanted to do. For whatever reason, God had that plan. But I remember they also say like when I was little, I wouldn't go anywhere without the football. Like I just used to keep it next to me. I kind of always been a student in that aspect of football. I kind of always been a student of the game. I never really wanted to be anything else. I had to be around it. I used to study like quarterbacks, like so it's kind of transition now because I'm getting older. My profession is a little different now, so I still study the game a lot. But I still practice the same thing I was doing when I was at such a young age. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I know for a fact I was sitting there watching Pat White from West Virginia, just sitting there eyeballing him. What was it that he did? I would try to mimic how they wore different outfits, whatever number they wore. Like, man, I always been a guy that studied big time guys from the time I was little. And I always been a guy that put in extra work. I remember in the summer when I was about 9 or 10, like me and my daddy being outside going through play phase. It just seemed like it was distant from an early age. That's really like a blessing to even be able to tell that. But early on, I was chosen for it.
Who were some of your influences growing up? Who were some of your college influences and some guys in the NFL you kind of looked up to?
All right, Michael Vick obviously is the reason that I even picked up a football. I remember at one point in time, Pat White was like a guy for me. That was when I was kind of in Pee Wee. I remember going to Gadsden City games and watching Darius Rudolph.
Yes, sir.
And so like his dad was actually my Pee Wee coach. That's the person who gave me the first opportunity to ever play quarterback at all, Coach Greg. Like I remember going and watching him. We used to go on Friday nights. Like that's what I wanted to be him. So when I started getting older, so like middle school, that was when Cam was the hot thing. Like,
right.
So from like my 7th grade year going to 8th grade, that was when Cam was like the hot thing.
Right.
So then it was Cam for a while. I remember Trevon Boykin was like my guy.
Okay.
From TCU.
Yeah.
Like that's the crazy thing. Like with me, I always had somebody that I was watching. I didn't really even watch NFL. I didn't feel like I could relate to none of the guys at the position. Right. Now, as I started getting older and I started respecting the position more, Aaron Rodgers was a big one for me because Aaron Rodgers was a student. Not only is he like athletically gifted, like he was an actual student of the game. Brady is a guy that I respected, but I never really wanted to be like, But those are guys like Trevon Boykin. I remember Michael Vick, Cam Newton for sure. Man, there's probably some couple guys in between that I was paying attention to a little bit, but man, them like some main guys. It's some older guys too that I used to watch, like Warren Moon.
Yeah.
I used to watch him a lot, like the pioneers of it. I really used to watch those guys quite a bit. When I was in high school, they did the little documentary on Conscious Holloway. I used to pay attention to them like a lot. Early on, I know like for sure, I was told like the reason I even picked up a ball was because of Michael Vick. That was the reason I did.
Well, hey, that's a good person to look up to, man. He was a great quarterback. And watching you play, you kind of did remind me of Michael Vick. So. Tell us about your playing days here at Gadsden City. When we started, you played under Coach Matt Scott, right?
Growing up in a town like this, as from really kind of as long as I remember, I was like the guy here. Even when I was like little, we used to have so many players, but I never really remember like it being quarterbacks. And then a lot of this stuff is like stuff that I found out as I got older. Like Pee Wee, we used to go to the games, and I remember like I used to have folks like on the sideline, kind of in awe about how I looked like a quarterback early on. But, most of that was probably my dad, some want to, and obviously some God stuff in there. Then kind of middle school, Coach Bill was still here, and then I remember Coach Garman was the offensive coordinator one year. And when I was in 7th grade, going into my 8th grade year, that summer I practiced with the high school. Like I would come up here, do some 7-on-7 stuff. My dad and Coach Smith were pretty close, so even back then, me and Coach Smith had a relationship when I was real little. But I remember being around them. I remember that whole year I actually ball boyed. My whole 8th grade year. Just being around the team, like being around those guys, and that was kind of when I met CJ, who was the quarterback at that time. I remember that 8th grade year going into 9th grade is when I started practicing here, like officially.
Right.
And it was almost like red shirting, but it was so much growth. Everybody kind of knew like I was the next guy up. I had kind of adopted that role, and that was kind of what I walked into. I tried to learn everything I could, but I had kind of started leading a little bit too, because I was starting to feel like I was the guy. And I will never forget the day we came in that spring, and Coach Bill kind of dropped us with the bomb that he was resigning and all that. And for me being like the kind of kid I was, I'm hurt, because I'm like, man, I got to set up everything in place, everything set how I wanted. Coach Smith had the schedule for me to go to camps that summer. Like, it was ready. Everything that I wanted was kind of set in place for me to be the biggest guy to come through here, whatever. And then I remember Coach Scott came in, and I'll probably get more into it later. That's one of my biggest influences as well. Early on, it wasn't like that. It wasn't no, like we didn't really get along. The type of player I was, what I possessed kind of wasn't what he was used to. It was a little different for his offense, and so like coming in, I really didn't get really much of an opportunity to play that first spring. I was kind of in between. I was mobile, so that kind of helped. I just kept working, and he was learning me, and I was learning him. And I remember like the first few games, I would end up playing because I was the only quarterback that could take a snap. So I would still get some burn here and there. I could run, so wildcat packages. And then I remember we had got killed by Pell City one game on homecoming, and he came in and he was like, look, man, you gonna start, I'm playing you, it is what it is. Whatever happened after that, I'm not pleasing anybody, you're gonna play. Regardless of how you practice, we going. And I remember that next week, God had a bigger plan for sure, because I'm sitting there about to play, I was 15 at the time, about to start against Clay Chapman. This was like the real Clay Chapman.
Was this the year they were undefeated coming in?
Yeah, Hayden Moore was a quarterback. I was going to Cincinnati. They had some dudes, and they were 2 in the state. Man, we just played. He had a scheme, and we ran it, and I probably ran the ball like 20-something times. The offense then wasn't nothing like what it ended up being. After that, I kind of became his guy, and we started working together. And then from that point on, he really is kind of what turned me into being a coach, because he showed me how to watch film. He showed me how to really be I talk about being a student. He showed me how to be a student. Like, I always had to want to. I always wanted to learn how to be a student of the game, but I was always doing it kind of, that specific part I was always kind of doing on my own. Like, I had coaches who helped me and groomed me physically, but mentally, he was that guy. He's told me how to sit down in meetings, or sit down and let's just watch film. And so like I remember from 10th grade going into my 11th grade year, we sat in here one day, I know for sure, it had to be like 12, 13 hours just watching. And we ended up beating Auburn in overtime that year, first game of the season. We sat here and watched Auburn. Man, a whole day, like I'm gassed. Like I'm probably sitting here with my hat sideways. He was gassed. That's what he showed. I got comfortable doing that. And we actually grew a bond. And so like, after so long, like my junior year was probably a year where we figured each other out. We had some moments. I remember getting pulled from a game, and then me and him after the game, like coming to a whole like agreement after the game, like in here at 11:30 at night or something like. But it took that, and it ended up getting to my senior year, where my senior year was lights out, no issues ever, because we had done so much work together that he kind of showed me how to think the way that he thought. Crazy thing is, him like that, those years was a catalyst for how I literally lived from then on. Like, it's so much stuff that he taught me then that I do the same exact thing. I approach football in a whole different way because of how he was. He showed me how to take a player's perspective and completely throw it out. I approach the game as a coach, as a player.
As a quarterback, you kind of have to do that.
He showed me how to be able to be that guy. Like, I never really needed help with being a leader. I was always going to be that. Physically, I was starting to get a lot bigger, but at how to approach the game and how to really be a student of the game as a player, he showed me how to do that. That's what I learned in the time that I was here. That's probably why we had so much success.
Do you still talk to Coach Scott?
Man, we talk all the time. Oh, boy. Me and Darnell, my good friend, man, we talk all the time. Actually, crazy thing is, before I even took the job, to come here. And that's what I called. Like, I had, I got a couple coaches I respect. Obviously, Coach Smith was the one offering me the job, but I just was kind of hesitant, I guess. And I called him. I was like, man, I remember I was sitting in Sonic parking lot. I was like, man, Coach, look, Gadsden City about to offer me a chance to coach. You know, I kind of just want to know what you think. He said, hell, man, that's what I always thought you were going to do anyway. Like, go do it. You know, after that was kind of when I was like, all right, I'm doing it. Because, you know, if he thought that highly of me and thought that I could be, you know, that kind of guy, and he's been nothing but help.
That's good.
Anything I need, man, he got me.
So after you left Gadsden City, you obviously went on to Tuskegee to play ball at Tuskegee. Talk to us about that experience.
Man, Tuskegee was awesome.
Right.
For a couple of reasons though, because when I was here, all right, so I had Coach Scott, but like I said earlier, everybody knew who I was from the time I was like 6, 7 years old. It wasn't like I had it made, but everybody knew who I was. I didn't have to prove myself around here when it came to football, ever, like in no capacity.
Right.
Well, when I got to Tuskegee, man, it was different. Everything was different. That's for sure one of the most humbling experiences I've ever had. I remember getting there, and I remember I left early in the summer. The way I am, I'm like, man, I'm gonna beat everybody down there. So I'm gonna be around the coaches first.
Yeah.
That'll like set me up so then I can travel, whatever. I went down there, needless to say, who is my good friend now, Jamarcus, he was the other quarterback that came in. We both ended up going down there together.
Right.
There's another quarterback that was down there, another one of my good friends. The little plan I had of like being first down there didn't work. But so we worked out, you know, I was a lot stronger because I had been working out a lot more. It was nothing that would say that I didn't have a fair shot, I guess. You know, and so when I got there, when we got to like the first few days of fall camp, like on the depth chart, I wasn't competing. Like, you know, the other guy was competing for a spot early, and I was kind of like battling from a young guy down. For me, the biggest realization I had to come to was like, hey, they don't know who I am. You know, like you get to college, like folks try you.
Yeah.
They think you're not like, you know, you can't play or whatever, like how you get here.
Right.
And I remember like the first day of fall camp, we were doing like, you do like a bench test and you do like a sprint test. You know, like for a lot of people who don't know, like me and Darnell, I would play for the Bears. Light's like my best friend. We always have been, like we locked.
Right.
Well, I remember calling him like, man, bro, I'm not even competing. Like we talk consistently. His deal was like, you know, saying, man, you know what we do, we work. And that was, and then I remember I went into that was my mindset. I was like, well, if I ain't I'm gonna show them. And I remember like first day of fall camp, we do like bench tests, and I had like 12 or 13, 225, which is a big deal for a freshman quarterback coming in. And so like everybody kind of like, oh. And then we do the 110 test, and we had a starter who was there. He was obviously gonna pass the 110 test. He's like 6'7", so he get down the field in however many seconds. Yeah. Well, I was the only other one that passed. I had to do that because I wasn't gonna get no chance if I didn't. Like that was kind of the chip on my shoulder. That whole freshman year, like, you know, it was stuff that happened in between, but that whole freshman year, I ended up traveling by the grace of God. But I grew. I kind of learned like everything ain't made. You know, like you gotta work. Yeah. You gotta put some. Which I was always a worker, but being on the back end was kind of hard for me. And then so that next spring, guy that was there had left. So Jamarcus, who was one of my friends, we were competing for the job, but he obviously wanted out. I felt like I played good. I mean, it was his time. Yeah. And so again, having to be behind him was a deal for me because he was my friend. If we didn't like each other, it'd been a lot easier to just go in and hate every day. Like, man, he sucked. I mean, I had to respect him. I mean, we were good friends. He wasn't a bad dude. It was his time, but I had to learn that. Right. And so, like, I remember coming in. My biggest growth I had was from that sophomore year, where I had went through. I had actually played somewhere in between there. Didn't play good, but my mindset was wrong. From that spring until that next fall, going into my junior year, was the biggest growth I've ever experienced just in life in general, because I had to learn how to be comfortable being the backup, comfortable in a sense that if this was where I'm at, if this is the season that God had me in, just be the best in that season. Right. And so like I remember telling myself, like going into the next fall camp, man, don't try to beat the guy out, don't try to be the starter, own the position. If you're the backup, be the best backup in college football. I started doing that, and ironically, the same thing that had happened the year before happened again, where Jamarcus got hurt. This time he was out for the year. And so like I step in blindly, kind of just like, And I remember the first start, I win player of the week. And all I was trying to do was just win the game. Like I didn't, the year before, I remember coming into a game and I wanted to score. Like I was like, man, I gotta get some stats, some look. And I didn't score at all. And I remember that I realigned my focus the next year. It was a lot more mature. It was just about, man, just win the game. Just put your team in position to win the game. And it started equivalating to a lot of stats, a lot of numbers.
Right.
Like, I mean, I had a 300-yard game in there. That was the year I won player of the year. But everything refocused. All my thought process had changed to, man, just do your job. Like, do what you're supposed to do. And I had never kind of, like here, it was easy to be that guy because I had so many players around. Right. And Coach Scott literally dialed it up for it to be easy to just dish the ball out. Well, there, it was a lot on me. How do I mentally make this game simpler for myself? Just going into that year, after like a couple games starting to get comfortable, man, I just turned into kind of an animal when it came to competition. Like I always been a competitor, but when I got to Tuskegee, it was another level. I probably became, like a fine line between being arrogant because I had to be. Like I had to have that chip. Right. So like now, when I coach, I mean, it's almost like a Tuskegee way. Like that's kind of how you see yourself as like I'm him. At the Thompson game, if you ever like paying attention, one of the coaches from Thompson was one of my old teammates. Well, before the game, we at the 50 going at it. But that's the way we had to be. Like that's how it was in practice every single day. Wow. And I learned how to hone in on being the best that I could be. I remember staying after practice with my receiver, Cheatham, at the time, as a backup. I was a backup, still doing the same things as if I was a starter. If I was a starter, I would want to be staying after practice. I started doing it as a backup. It was never about the position I was in, whether I was a starter or a backup. It was just about me being the best person that I can be. So I started practicing habits that I would do in the long run. Right. I've not been in Tuskegee and been in like pressurized situations like that. I don't know if I would ever have to do that because that was my response to being uncomfortable. I was in an uncomfortable situation, not being the guy that everybody knew. I had to grow up. If I wanted to ever play, I had to change my mindset and grow up. And it ended up working out for the best, obviously. That's why I think God put everybody where he put them for a reason, because I experienced growth. Like I learned how to be a man when it came to just life in general, from being there, being in that situation.
You talk about Darnell Mooney. Both of you guys registered for the NFL draft. Talk to us about that experience.
I think the funnest part about it was just being in New Orleans with Darnell. Yeah. And PJ, who is, one of my good friends now. Me, him, and Darnell, we're pretty close. But that's kind of how I met PJ. Darnell kind of knew, our situations were a little different in a sense of Darnell knew he was going to get drafted, and I knew that I was going to have opportunities to play. Right. I just didn't know where. I didn't know if it was going to be NFL, CFL, overseas. I didn't care either. I'm just working out blindly, for real. But it didn't matter because I was with him and we were working. That was kind of when COVID hit. So that was weird. Times were weird in general. Yeah. Darnell came to Tuskegee one time, helped me move some stuff out, and we went to New Orleans. I just rode with him. I didn't even know how long I was going to be there. I rode with him down there. I guess I thought I was going to be there for like a day or two or something. Little did I know he had like all this stuff planned. I was planning to come home that weekend, and then he was like, nah, we good. And this was actually after he had got drafted, because I remember when we first got in there, got to New Orleans, he had like a whole bunch of Chicago stuff just sitting there. So it was after he had got drafted, I kind of was pretty sure that I was going to go overseas at this point. I didn't bring no clothes, like no nothing. He was like, you good? Don't worry about it. We good. We gonna work out. We gonna play the game. PJ was there. And so like, man, we just bonded. That's probably one of the best things could have ever happened for my life. We just bonded every day. We worked like every day. We went and worked out, ate good, and we played the game every single day. Probably played Monopoly. Man, we just bonded. And it was a good time for us to get away and kind of just, refocus and kind of figure out, like, man, I had no idea what I was about to do. Man, it wasn't a worry in the world at the time. Like, man, we were just working. Like, that's all it was. We just working every single day. We go work out, we get up, go run, and nothing mattered. It was kind of peace. During that time, it's actually when I kind of found peace in what all I had going on, because I kind of was worried about what I was going to do, where I was going to be. But it didn't, as it started going on and we just kept on working, all that stuff just stopped. I stopped caring. I stopped worrying about, and just start having faith. Like, man, whatever God got me for, he got me. If I remember, that was the last time I even was preparing for something football-wise as an athlete. If nothing else, I was there in a season to help Darnell prepare. With COVID, he couldn't go nowhere. He couldn't go to Chicago. Yeah. He couldn't kind of go work out. I mean, so every day he had somebody to throw to him every day. I remember going through his playbook. I actually had to do an interview on that time before. If nothing else, that's what it was for. It was to help him prepare and to help me find peace and what I had going on. So I'm very grateful for that time.
So tell us about the process, how things kind of went getting you here to Gadsden City. How did all that come about?
If you ask any player that I ever played with, would I have been a coach, they would have known it. Because I was that guy, especially when I was here. Like I don't miss workouts. I'm probably early, probably the first guy in the building. I'm probably the last guy to leave. I always adapted that mentality. But I was a student of the game, like I say a lot. As far as on the field, man, I knew what everybody was supposed to do. I knew what this guy was supposed to do, and I was gonna make sure they did it. Kind of something that I'm trying to teach now. That's your job. I was always the person that kind of understood. Like I don't just ask, what the quarterback do. I want to know everybody's specific role and why. And I've always been like that. In fact, at Tuskegee, I think Coach Kirby and Coach Slater at the beginning thought I knew everything. That's just how I was. Right. So after that little specific time in New Orleans that we had worked out or whatever, I think Darnell had finally went to Chicago, and I was still working out because this was still when the overseas thing was a possibility. Crazy thing is, me and Luke had started training with me. So during that time, right before I went to New Orleans, I came home for a hot second, and Luke had started training. He had kind of reached out to me. That was crazy. He had hit me up. Like, I didn't even know who the dude was. He like kind of DM'd me one day and was like, man, can you work out with me, or, do you have some drills or something I can do? So he had started training with me. Kind of knew who he was. And now I want to say that was why I came to the field that day, because he was going to work out with me after that. Kind of had been leaning that way. I would come back in between every few years, and me and Coach Smith would talk, and it was, you kind of knew, that it was kind of brewing, that was a possibility. And then, man, one day they were doing 7-on-7 because they had summer practice that day, so I was waiting. Like, I want to say something to the quarterback about what he doing, but I don't want to overstep no boundaries or whatever. Telling Coach Smith, man, they ain't me being me, thinking I know everything. Man, he ain't even doing that right. Like, man, you need a coach. You need a quarterback coach, like a real coach that know how to help. And he was like, see, that's the thing. Everybody want to come around here and they want to, how you going to help me? Me and him, like, we go on them talks. And little did I know, me thinking I know everything. He get to schooling me. This one of the rare times I can ever remember just shutting up, let me know what's going on. We get to talking and we get to going back and forth. And then for some reason, I just kind of started feeling like it just kind of shifted. And I can kind of remember feeling in between our conversation, like, man, he talking about coaching, and it felt right. Yeah. It didn't hurt that at the time I didn't know what I was about to do. But man, I'm a faith-based guy. Right. Like, period. It's only I only believe in one way of following my source. Right. That's my way. Right. That's what works for me because I've seen it. When I go back and look at my life now, there's no way I'm supposed to be here. But like they say, but God, God had me, and then I saw how He worked for my friend. He took care of my people. My best friend is well taken care of. I have no choice but to have faith. When stuff like that happened in my life, like just seeing where my parents are now, seeing where my family is, and seeing my sisters. That's why I have faith. Because it was bigger than just me. Like, not only did He work for me, man, he took care of my people. Right. And He brought us from like some very tough times, stuff that you're not supposed to make it out of. No way you're supposed to make it out of the situation that I came from, but I did, and that's nobody but, that's favor.
What kind of sets us apart from a lot of media is we're not owned by a bigger company, so we can talk about these kind of things.
See, I like that I can be upfront, vocal, and kind of tell my story. So
now you're the quarterback coach here at Gadsden City. Tell us about that relationship with Luke. It seems like from the outside looking in, it seems like y'all have a really good relationship with each other. It's almost like y'all are brothers.
Me and Luke different. We different in a sense, man. Like I said, the whole situation of how me and him even got connected was crazy. If I remember correctly, one day I was like on Instagram Live. I was still in Tuskegee. This is kind of when COVID had started. Yeah. And I was on my Instagram Live, and he kind of did a little comment in between, like, yo, would you ever be interested in training a quarterback or something? When I see stuff like that, I normally don't respond. Right. Because it's normally some kid that's just like, probably gonna maybe work out one time or something like that. I'm gonna take it more serious than he is. But he was like kind of for real. I wanna say it was something like, yeah, when I get back, we can do something, whatever. So I remember like the first time he came, I hope when he see this, like, he don't want me to tell nobody, he don't want me to be vocal about it, but to him, he was kind of like starstruck a little bit. I think this is why it gets so crazy, because it was life-changing for me. I kind of picture all those games that I played in high school or in college that he was at, following my standard, or wanting to play how I played, and me not knowing. Like, I had no idea who the kid was, who he is, and the whole time what I'm doing is laying a foundation for what he's about to do.
Right.
So that's why it's kind of like, it freaks me out now. As time started going on, like, you know, it was one thing to train him, and then becoming the coach was a deal. Like, my first year, I wasn't the quarterback coach, I was just coaching. Being around him was cool.
Yeah.
Like, and kind of being there to help him, it was kind of more like a mentor. But then this past season, flipping and becoming the quarterback coach, that's when it became like, whew. Man, all the stuff that the coach, like Coach Scott used to say to me all the time, I started seeing it for him. It's so many times I want to just kind of like try to beat something through his head, but I can't even. I have to think about how I was. I was just like that.
Right.
He want to know. He want to know the why. He want to ask questions. It's like beauty behind it. Like, man, this dude really act just like how I did. Like, he literally do everything that I did.
Yeah.
And it's not like you want to be like me. This is what I asked for. I asked to set a standard that literally would bring people to try to follow that way. I think now it's kind of, as he's starting to mature in that, it gets a lot better. And throughout the season, it was like that. You know, like early on, like you see in practice, we have our moments. That's when it feel more like a brother than anything, because like sometimes I have to line them up. But see, even then, like, it's been times where like I've lined them up and then I'm like, man, I need to chill out. Like, I need to lay off of them. But it was we had to fill each other out. It was a different space. It wasn't like, hey, we just going to train at the field today. I'm going to work out. You can come if you want. It was now like, I'm his coach. Help him be a better person. Help him be a better player. I think the beauty of seeing his growth from when he was a ninth grader to this year was amazing. Now I'm starting to see him in a game.
Yeah.
Like, now I'm starting, like, my role it changed. I'm his comfort. Like, I'm the person he goes to. Me at games, having to be on the headset talking to him after he did something big and calming him down, or after he done went and did something bad, and then, hey, you good. I'm still kind of in shock sometimes because, man, it's so different working with him. The only thing he'll ever know is what I teach him, and that's the first person. I dearly love Matthew, who's coming after him, and Kyle, who's after him. Right. You know, Lord's will. With Luke, the difference is like we going through it first together. I can be a better coach for Matthew and Kyle because of Luke, right. Because everything that I figure out, he's the person I figure it out with. At the same time, it's off the field too. You know, I do anything for the kid as I would do for any of my players in general. But, you know, just like some of the other times, you know, like when he called me about stuff that's not football related, you know, like when he called me about actual life stuff that he got going on, or how, I think that's also too the beauty of it. Like, you know, it actually makes me be a better person. It gives me something to work for. I have a different motivation for getting up, because what would he do if I didn't show up? What if he called me and I didn't answer? And I couldn't help him. You know, he called me all the time. You know, he's giving me a different outlook on being a coach and what it means to be one. And I truly believe that was God lining it up the way it was. And I truly believe that he was put in my life to teach me how to be a better person. You know, now I always give him stuff about him walking behind me, him being like wanting to be like me. But little do he know, I learn something on a daily basis from him. You don't got no choice. He wild child.
Oh yeah, he is.
Like he really teach me how to be a better coach. Him and Matthew and Kai, them boys, they something serious.
Oh yeah.
But they helped me grow up, and I'll be, you know, I think years down the road, you know, my aspirations, I'll be grateful for them. Yeah. I really will, because man, they done taught me so much. As a whole, it's crazy.
And I've seen Matthew and Kyle. I've seen those guys play, and they're gonna be all something special. Yeah. And the crazy thing about that, you know, you were talking about how Luke was looking up to you when you were in high school. I don't know if he knows that there's a young quarterback, you know, right here in Gadsden that looks up to him. Yeah. He you know, he loves Luke. He's in awe, and it's almost kind of like the same thing is happening that happened.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that's so crazy. Like, I never saw it from this side. I saw it from being Luke.
Yeah.
But the thing with Luke is the outlet for him is that not only did I walk directly in the footsteps, but so like for me, I used to wonder like, man, dude, I wonder if people like look up to me or something like that, whatever. Yeah. Well, I see him go through that. Like I see him, he asked me, like, man, you think folks at the game like want to be number 2 like how you were, want to be or my number like how they were with you? And I'm like, yeah, like that's kind of what it come with. Oh, yeah. But I'm grateful that I can help him walk through that. Because even Matthew and Kai, they gonna do everything the way that he do it. That's just how it goes. If they felt like he could get away with something, they gonna think that. You know, that's just teenage boys in general. I'm grateful that I can be here to help him because it's a right and wrong way to handle that much responsibility, especially for a kid like he extra young too. So, you know, that's a lot of responsibility, but I mean he can handle it. I think it's just so ironic that I'm sitting here watching somebody literally go through what I went through.
If there was something you can tell the youth growing up in Gadsden right now, what would you tell them as far as them going out, achieving their dreams and coming back and giving to the city like you have?
It's actually a term that I'm kind of starting to live by. Just be you. What I mean by that is, sometimes I wish that I would have embodied me being like a coach at an early age because that's who I am. And so I think a lot of times, especially coming from where we come from, you only see so many outlets. I make it a point to dress the way that I want to dress. I make it a point to live the way that I want to live. And I make it a point to be exclusive and open with them about that because I don't want them to ever think that it's a limit or a space on what you can do. I teach and I coach, but that's who I am. Like, I'm gonna be who I am. I'm gonna do it the way that I wanna do it, the way that I see fit, the way that I'm comfortable doing it. Some of the issues that I faced is worrying about like the image that is portrayed as far as if I'm this person, I have to look like this. Me and Coach Smith had this out. Like, and obviously I follow his rules, but like wearing khakis, I'm not a khaki guy. Right. Now, I ain't put in enough time to be able to change that. Like that's who I am. You know what I mean? Like, be who you are. Be what you like. Be that person. Don't switch it up. You know, I went out on a limb coming back to Gadsden. I did it for every kid that I played with that we came before. I owe it to the people who were here. You have to be another level of comfortable, at peace with yourself and the space you in to be able to do that. Because so many people that come from here, the thing is like, why go back to Gadsden? Right. Gadsden has a lot to offer, a great amount to offer, but you don't know that because we only see one side. Exactly. Now I'm seeing the other side of it. I'm seeing the positive that I never saw. You have to be willing to step out on a limb to do that. And so like, man, whatever, you know, be you and speak things that you want. I firmly believe in what I'm capable of, especially as a coach. And sometimes like, I'll be very vocal about saying it. I feel like I put in the work to be able to do that. And I also feel like manifesting that. If that's what I want, if that's my aspirations, if the goals that I have set forth in front of me are what I want, go get it. Like, there's nobody to say that I can't go get it. I feel like I'm him when it comes to that type of stuff. I mean, rightfully so, because I put in the time. Right. But if your work aligns with what you want, who's to tell you can't? You know, like, you in charge of that. So I guess that's what I would leave. Like, be who you are. Be comfortable in doing it. Whatever it is that you feel like you want to do it your way. Nobody can tell you how to look. Like, I'm going to continue to go wear what I want. I'm going to wear my earrings. You know, like, I'm going to wear a bunch of necklaces and chains. That allows me to be my best version of myself. Right. And it gives these kids hope. So anything that I can do to give them a better outlook on what they can do for their life, I'm doing it by far, because that's who it's about.
Coach DeRamus, we appreciate you, man. We'll see you very soon for spring football time.
Yeah.
All right.
Watch the mic though.